The fight between light and dark has gone on since time began. When we look at the world, we see both sides at work. The Daedra push and pull, trying to change things their way. The Daedra hold things together with rules that keep the world from breaking apart. But why do the Daedra never win? What stops them from taking over? The answer lies in what they are and how the world was made. To know this fight that never ends, we need to go back to the start, when gods were born and the world was just an idea. Long ago, there was only empty space and light. From this came beings with great power who would make all we know today. These beings were called the Etada. Some would become the Daedra who made the world. Others would become the Daedra who ruled the dark places between worlds. The split was not just about what they chose to do, but what they were willing to give up. When Lorcan came to the others with his plan to make a world, some listened and some did not. Those who listened gave up part of their power to make Mundus. These became the Daedra. But other spirits saw this plan and stayed away. They kept all their power but lost the chance to help make something new. These became the Daedra. This choice at the start set up a war that still goes on today. The Daedra gave up some power to make rules that let the world exist. The Daedra kept their power, but now live outside those rules. This might seem like the Daedra got the better deal, but it makes them weak in some ways. The rules that hold the world together also keep it safe from those who would break it. When the Daedra chose to help make the world, they made themselves part of it. Their power flows through everything from rocks in the ground to air we breathe. This means they do not need to force their way in from outside like the Daedra do. The Daedra are like strangers trying to break into a house, while the Daedra are the family who built it and live inside. The house has locks and walls that keep strangers out, but the family can go anywhere they want inside. This is why Daedric attacks always fail in the end. They fight against the very stuff the world is made of. Every time a Daedric prince tries to take over part of the world, they have to break through walls that were made when the world was born. These walls are not just stone or wood. They are the basic rules that say what can exist and what cannot. When Mehrunes Dagon tried to bring his world of fire and pain into Mundus, he was not just fighting the people who lived here. He was fighting against the idea that Mundus should exist as a place where people can live and grow. The world itself pushed back against him because his dream of endless pain was the opposite of what Mundus was made to be. The dragonfires were not just pretty flames that kept doors closed. They were a sign of the deal the Daedra made when they chose to make the world. As long as that deal held, the world would fight any try to change what it really is. This is why the crisis ended when Martin Septim shattered the Amulet of Kings and became the avatar of Akatosh. He was not just one person fighting one Daedric prince. He was the physical form of Akatosh himself, saying that the Daedra's choice to make the world still mattered. The Daedra faced the same problem every time they tried to attack. They can send armies and open portals, but they cannot change what the world is deep down. Molagbal learned this during the plane melt when he tried to pull Tamriel into Cold Harbor. He could grab pieces of the world and drag them into his realm, but he could not make them truly part of Cold Harbor. The towns he took kept their real nature even in his realm. They were still places where people had lived and loved and built their lives. His power could twist them and make them dark, but it could not erase what they really were. This is because the Daedra put part of themselves into everything they made. Every tree and stone and stream has a tiny bit of Daedric power in it. This power remembers what it was made to be and fights to stay that way. When Daedric power tries to change something, the Daedric power in it pushes back. The Daedra also face another problem that Daedra do not have. They do not work together toward one goal. Each Daedric prince wants to shape the world in their own way, and these ways often fight against each other. Azura wants mystery and change, while Meridia wants harsh light that burns away all secrets. Sheogorath wants chaos, while his former self, Jigalog, wanted perfect order. When one Daedric prince gains power, the others often work to stop them because they do not want their rival to win. The Daedra do not have this problem because they all agreed on the same basic goal when they made the world. They wanted to make a place where new things could grow and change while still following certain rules. Even when they have different ideas about how this should work, they are still working toward the same end. Akatosh wants time to flow in order, while Kynareth wants the wild to be free, but both of these things can exist in the same world without stopping each other. The Daedra cannot say the same thing about their goals. When we look at Aetherius, the realm of Daedra, we see why Daedra cannot win their war. Aetherius is not just another plane like the realms of Oblivion. It is the source of all magic and all life in the world. The light that shines through holes torn in the sky by Magnus and the Magna Gi carries the power that makes everything work. This light flows into everything and keeps it tied to the first plan the Daedra had when they made the world. The Daedra have their own realms in Oblivion, but these realms are separate from each other and from Mundus. They can touch Mundus and change it, but they cannot become part of it the way Aetherius is. Oblivion is like a group of islands that are not tied to the mainland. The people on each island can build boats and sail to other places, but they will always be visitors and strangers. Aetherius is like the ocean itself that touches every shore and flows under every boat. The Daedra can sail on this ocean, but they cannot control it or change what it is. This tie between Aetherius and Mundus also means that Daedra can draw on endless power when they need to. They do not have to store up energy or gather armies the way Daedra do. The power is already there in everything waiting to be used. When Martin Septim called on Akatosh, he was not asking for help from a faraway god. He was calling on the power that was already in the world around him. The dragon that came was made from the stones of the temple and the faith of the people and the light from Aetherius all working together. The Daedra cannot do this because their power comes from outside Mundus. They have to bring it in through portals and gates and other openings they make. These openings can be closed or blocked or turned against them. During the Oblivion Crisis, every time someone closed an Oblivion gate, they were cutting off a supply line that Mehrunes Dagon needed to keep his invasion going. But no one can cut off the flow of power from Aetherius because it is not flowing through gates or portals. It is part of the world itself. Another reason Daedra cannot win is that they do not know what winning would really mean. They think they want to control the world, but control and making are not the same thing. The Daedra did not take control of anything when they made Mundus. They gave up control by putting part of themselves into what they made. This act of giving up control is what made the world able to grow and change and become more than what its makers planned. The Daedra want to force their will on the world, but will and wisdom are different things. A king can make his people obey him, but he cannot make them love him, or trust him, or work together to build something beautiful. The Daedra are like kings who rule through fear, while Daedra are like parents who guide their children, but let them make their own choices. Fear can make people obey for a while, but it cannot make them create, or build, or love. These things only come from freedom and trust and hope. The world that Daedra made is designed to grow these things, while the realms of Daedra eat them up. This is why Daedric attacks always leave Mundus weaker and more broken, even when they fail. They take away the things that make the world alive and growing. But these things always come back because they are part of the basic design of the world. The Daedra can cut down what grows, but they cannot change the soil that makes growth possible. The people of Tamriel also play a part in why Daedra cannot win. When the Daedra made Mundus, they did not just make a place for people to live. They made people to be part of the world itself. Every person who is born carries a spark of Aetherius in their soul. This spark ties them to the power that made the world and gives them the ability to use magic and make choices and create new things. The Daedra can change people and make deals with them, but they cannot create new people or give them souls. Only the power of Aetherius can do this. This means that every new group of people that is born makes the world stronger and makes Daedra weaker by comparison. The people are not just living in the world, they are adding to it and making it more than it was before. The Daedra can corrupt people or kill them, but they cannot stop new ones from being born, and they cannot take away the spark of creation that each one carries. This is why the heroes who save the world are always people and not gods. The gods already gave what they could give when they made the world. It is up to people to protect what was made and help it grow into something even better. The hero of Kuach who stopped the Oblivion Crisis was not special because they were chosen by gods. They were special because they chose to act when action was needed. The tie between time and change also works against Daedra. Time flows from Aetherius through Mundus in a pattern that was set when Akatosh helped make it. This pattern allows for growth and change, but within certain limits. New things can be made and old things can pass away, but the basic shape of time itself stays the same. The Daedra exist outside this pattern of time, which gives them certain good points, but also creates problems for them. They can sometimes see the future or change the past, but they cannot control the flow of time itself. When they try to change something in Mundus, they have to work within the pattern of time that Daedra made. This means their changes often get worn away or undone as time moves forward. The Daedra can make their marks on Mundus, but the flow of time from Aetherius will smooth them away in the end. The Daedra do not have this problem because they helped make the pattern of time. Their influence on Mundus works with the flow of time instead of against it. Changes they make become part of the pattern and last as long as time itself lasts. This is why temples and holy places seem to resist decay and rot longer than other buildings. They are lined up with the pattern of time itself and draw strength from it. Magic itself is another reason why Daedra cannot win fully. All magic comes from Aetherius through the holes that Magnus and the Magna Ge tore in the sky when they left the project of making Mundus. This means that even when Daedra use magic, they are using power that comes from the realm of their enemies. They can twist this power and corrupt it, but they cannot change where it comes from or cut off the supply. Every spell that is cast and every magic item that is made draws on the power of Aetherius. This power remembers its source and will always be changed by the first purpose for which it was made. The Daedra meant magic to help Mundus grow and change in good ways. Even when magic is used for dark purposes, it still carries this first meaning, like a seed that might sprout when conditions are right. This is why corrupt mages and evil wizards often find that their power turns against them in the end. They are using a tool that was made for creation to try to destroy, and the tool remembers what it was meant for. The Daedra also face the problem that they are trying to change something that is always changing itself. The world that Daedra made was designed to grow and evolve over time. Each age brings new challenges and new solutions and new ways of understanding what it means to be alive in Mundus. The Daedra base their attacks on what Mundus was like in the past, but Mundus is always becoming something new. By the time they have figured out how to attack the world as it is, the world has already become something else. This is like trying to hit a target that is moving not just through space, but through time as well. You might aim for where it was or where you think it will be, but it is always somewhere else when your attack arrives. The people who live in Mundus are part of this constant change and growth. Each group of people faces problems that no previous group had to deal with, and finds solutions that no one had thought of before. The Daedra cannot predict or control this creativity because it comes from the spark of Aetherius that each person carries. This spark ties them to the endless possibility that lies at the heart of creation itself. When we look at the great Daedric invasions of history, we see this pattern repeated again and again. The Daedra build up their power and plan their attack based on how they think Mundus works. They gather armies and open portals and corrupt important people to serve their cause. But when they finally strike, they find that the world has changed while they were planning. New heroes have risen, and new alliances have formed, and new kinds of magic have been discovered. The people fight back not just with weapons and spells, but with creativity and determination and hope. These things cannot be planned for or defended against because they come from the basic nature of what it means to be alive and free. The Daedra understand power and fear and desire, but they do not understand hope because hope requires the ability to imagine something that does not yet exist. Only beings who are tied to Aetherius, the realm of endless possibility, can truly hope for something better. The way history repeats in Tamriel also works against Daedric victory. The Kalpas, or world ages that make up the history of creation, are not just repetitions of the same events. Each Kalpa is a chance for the world to learn from what happened before and grow stronger. The mistakes of one age become the wisdom of the next. The Daedra might win battles or even whole wars, but they cannot win the larger contest because each defeat teaches the world how to resist them better. The Daedra built this learning process into the very structure of time and space. Every ending becomes a new beginning, and every loss becomes a lesson that makes future victory more likely. The Daedra do not have this advantage because they exist outside the flow of time that allows for learning and growth. They are stuck with the same strategies and the same understanding that they had at the beginning. They can become more powerful, but they cannot become wiser because wisdom comes from the ability to change and grow. The tie between order and chaos also favors Daedra in their unseen war with Daedra. The order that Daedra made is not rigid or unchanging like the order that Jigalog tried to force on everything. It is a living order that can bend without breaking and adapt to new circumstances while still keeping its basic structure. This kind of order is much stronger than the rigid control that Daedra tried to force because it works with the natural tendency of things to change and grow instead of fighting against it. When Daedra tried to force their vision on Mundus, they create resistance and conflict. The harder they push, the harder the world pushes back. But when Daedra guide the world, they work with its natural currents and help it flow in directions that are good for everyone. This is why Daedric influence tends to create harmony and prosperity, while Daedric influence creates strife and suffering even when it gives people what they think they want. The champions and heroes who oppose Daedric invasions are not just fighting for their own lives or their own people. They are fighting for the right of all things to grow and change and become more than what they are. This gives them a strength that comes from being lined up with the basic forces of creation itself. They are not just individuals with weapons and magic. They are expressions of the will of Mundus to remain free and alive and growing. The Daedra can kill individual heroes, but they cannot kill the spirit that makes heroes possible. As long as the world exists and people live in it, there will always be those who are willing to stand up for what is right and fight against those who would destroy or enslave. This heroic spirit is not something that can be made by laws or magic or divine intervention. It comes from the spark of Aetherius that burns in every living soul and ties each person to the endless possibilities of creation. There is another key reason why Daedra struggle to win their war, and that lies in the nature of dragon souls and the power they represent. Dragons are beings of pure time made flesh and blood. They carry within them a piece of the same power that Akatosh used to help create Mundus. When dragons speak, they are not just making sounds, but using the thuum, the voice, which shapes reality itself. This is why, when a dragon breathes fire or ice, they are speaking words of power that make these things real. The thuum is older than mortal magic and more basic than the spells that wizards learn. It comes straight from the first words that were spoken when Mundus was made. The Daedra fear this power because it represents something they cannot control or corrupt. A dragon's soul is tied so deeply to the fabric of reality that even death cannot fully destroy it. When a dragon dies, its soul returns to the flow of time itself, waiting to be reborn in a new form. This is why the Dragonborn is so important in the cosmic war between Daedra and Daedra. A Dragonborn has the soul of a dragon in the body of a mortal. This gives them access to powers that Daedra cannot take away or corrupt. When a Dragonborn shouts, they are speaking with the voice of creation itself. The words they use are the same words that were used to make mountains and seas and stars. No amount of Daedric corruption can change what these words mean or stop them from working. The Daedra have tried many times to corrupt or control Dragonborn, but they always fail because the dragon soul cannot be separated from its tie to Akatosh and Aetherius. Even when a Dragonborn makes bad choices or serves dark masters, their soul remains pure at its core. This is why prophecies often speak of Dragonborn as the ones who will save the world in its darkest hours. They represent the will of creation itself made manifest in mortal form. The power of dragon souls also explains why certain artifacts and weapons are so effective against Daedra and their servants. Items made from dragon bones or scales, or infused with dragon souls, carry some of this primal creative power. They remember what Mundus was meant to be and fight to preserve that vision. This is why ancient Nordic weapons and armor were often made with dragon materials. The Nords understood that dragons were not just powerful beasts, but living embodiments of the creative force that made the world. Daedra also struggle with the concept of mortal free will in ways that reveal their basic weakness. When Daedra made mortals, they gave them true choice. This was not an oversight or a flaw in the design, but a deliberate decision that makes Mundus stronger. Free will means that mortals can choose to follow Daedra and serve dark purposes, but it also means they can choose to resist and fight back. The Daedra see free will as something to be eliminated or controlled, but they do not understand that trying to remove free will actually makes them weaker. A servant who chooses to serve is infinitely more valuable than one who is forced to serve. Chosen loyalty creates power, while forced obedience creates weakness. This is why Daedric cults and religions always eventually collapse or turn against their masters. People who are forced to worship will eventually rebel, while people who choose to worship create lasting bonds of power and devotion. The Daedra understood this from the beginning, which is why they built free will into the very foundation of Mundus. Mortal souls have another protection that Daedra cannot overcome, and that is their connection to each other. When Daedra made mortals, they did not make them as isolated individuals, but as beings who are meant to live together and support each other. This social nature creates networks of power that Daedra cannot fully penetrate or control. Even when they corrupt some individuals, the bonds between mortals create resistance that spreads and grows stronger over time. Love, friendship, family, loyalty, trust, and compassion are not just emotions, but actual forces that create barriers against Daedric influence. A person who is loved and trusted by others has a strength that comes from outside themselves. Daedra can attack individuals, but they struggle against communities that are bound together by genuine care and mutual support. This is why their attacks often focus on dividing people and breaking down social bonds. They know that isolated individuals are much easier to corrupt than people who are part of strong communities. The worship and reverence that mortals give to Daedra also creates a feedback loop that makes Mundus stronger over time. When people pray to Daedra or visit their temples or try to live according to their teachings, they are not just asking for favors. They are actively participating in the ongoing creation of the world. Each act of genuine worship adds a tiny bit of power to the forces that hold the world together and protect it from destruction. Daedra try to create this same kind of worship, but they face a basic problem. True worship must be freely given and based on genuine reverence and love. It cannot be forced or faked without losing its power. When people worship Daedra out of fear or for selfish gain, they create weak and unstable bonds that can easily be broken. Only worship that comes from the heart creates real power, and Daedra, by their very nature, inspire fear and hatred rather than love and reverence. The seasonal cycles and natural rhythms of Mundus also work against Daedric victory. The world that Daedra made follows patterns that repeat but also evolve over time. Spring always follows winter, but each spring is different from the last. This creates a kind of resilience that allows the world to recover from damage and grow stronger. Daedra represent forces of stagnation and entropy that work against these natural cycles. When they gain influence, the seasons become harsh and unpredictable. Crops fail, harvests are poor, and the natural balance that sustains life begins to break down. But the power of the cycles is stronger than any temporary disruption. Even after the worst disasters and the most devastating attacks, the seasons return and life begins to flourish again. The Daedra can create winter, but they cannot prevent the eventual coming of spring. Animals and plants carry their own form of resistance to Daedric influence that adds to the overall protection of Mundus. Every living thing, from the smallest insect to the largest whale, carries a spark of the same creative force that made the world. This spark gives them an instinctive resistance to corruption and destruction. Animals will flee from areas where Daedric influence is strong, and plants will wither and die rather than be transformed into something evil. This creates a kind of early warning system that alerts mortals to danger and helps them prepare their defenses. The Daedra can corrupt some creatures and turn them into servants, but they cannot change the basic nature of life itself. Corrupted animals are always weaker and less stable than their natural counterparts because they are fighting against their own essential nature. Magical creatures and spirits represent another layer of protection that Daedra must overcome. Elementals, nature, spirits, forest guardians, and other magical beings are tied directly to the creative forces that made Mundus. They serve as guardians and protectors that work to maintain the balance and prevent corruption from spreading. Daedra can sometimes corrupt or destroy individual spirits, but they cannot eliminate the source from which new spirits are constantly being born. For every guardian they destroy, two more will eventually take its place, because the creative force of the world is always working to repair damage and restore balance. The land features of Mundus also resist Daedric power in ways that are not easy to see. Mountains, rivers, forests, and other natural forms are not just random piles of rock and water and wood. They are patterns that were set when Mundus was made, and they carry within them a kind of memory of the first creative plan. Sacred sites and places of power are often located at points where these patterns cross and make each other stronger. This creates stable zones of resistance that Daedra find very hard to corrupt or control. Even when they gain power over these areas for a while, the land itself works to push them out and restore the natural order. The study of magic and the pursuit of knowledge also create resistance to Daedric influence. When mortals learn about how Mundus works and discover the laws that govern magic and nature, they are participating in the same creative process that the Daedra used to make the world. Knowledge and understanding create their own kind of power that Daedra cannot easily corrupt or destroy. This is why they often target schools, libraries, and centers of learning in their attacks. They know that educated people are much harder to deceive and control than ignorant ones. But knowledge has a way of preserving itself and spreading, even under the worst conditions. Books can be burned, but the ideas they contain live on in the minds of those who read them. Teachers can be killed, but their students carry on their work. The pursuit of truth and understanding is one of the strongest forces working against the influence of Daedra because it reveals their lies and exposes their weaknesses. Art, music, poetry, and other forms of creative expression also serve as weapons in the cosmic war between Daedra and Daedra. When mortals create beautiful things, they are channeling the same creative force that made Mundus. Each work of art is a small act of creation that adds to the total sum of beauty and meaning in the world. Daedra hate beauty and meaning because these things remind everyone of what the world could become if their influence were removed. They try to corrupt artists and turn their creativity toward dark purposes, but true art has a way of transcending the intentions of its creators. Even when artists serve Daedra, their work often contains elements of beauty and truth that work against their masters. The power of names and naming also plays a role in protecting Mundus from Daedric influence. When Daedra made the world, they gave names to everything in it. These names are not just labels, but expressions of the essential nature of what is named. Knowing the true name of something gives power over it, but also creates responsibility for protecting and preserving it. Daedra tried to corrupt or change the names of things as a way of changing their nature, but the true names are written into the fabric of reality itself and cannot be permanently altered. When mortals speak the true names of things, they are invoking the power that created them and reinforcing their resistance to corruption. Prophecy and fate work in mysterious ways to protect Mundus from Daedric victory. The future is not fixed, but certain broad patterns were established when the world was made. These patterns create currents in the flow of time that tend to push events toward outcomes that preserve and strengthen the world. Daedra can sometimes fight against these currents and achieve temporary victories, but the overall flow of fate works against them. Prophets and seers who can glimpse these patterns serve as early warning systems that help prepare defenses against Daedric attacks. The patterns of fate are not rigid rules that remove free will, but general tendencies that create opportunities for good to triumph over evil. Heroes arise when they are needed, and the right people find themselves in the right places at the right times, not because everything is predetermined, but because the structure of Mundus creates conditions that favor positive outcomes. Understanding the true nature of the conflict between Daedra and Daedra helps us see why the Daedra continue to try even though they cannot ultimately succeed. They are not stupid or foolish about their chances. They know that they cannot completely destroy or control Mundus, but they also know that they can cause suffering and chaos and prevent the world from reaching its full potential. In a sense, they are fighting not to win, but to make sure that Daedra cannot fully win either. Every person who is corrupted by Daedric influence and every act of cruelty or destruction that they inspire is a victory of sorts. Not because it brings them closer to total control, but because it shows that the world is not perfect and that the vision of Daedra is not complete. The Daedra serve as a constant reminder that creation is an ongoing process and that the forces of destruction and entropy are always present and always active. This might seem like a dark and sad way to look at the cosmic conflict, but it actually reveals something hopeful about the nature of existence itself. The fact that Daedra cannot win means that destruction and evil are not as powerful as creation and good. Mundus has a built-in tendency toward life and growth and beauty that is stronger than any force that tries to oppose it. This does not mean that evil is weak or that good will triumph easily. The struggle is real, and the outcomes of individual battles are not predetermined. People must still choose to do what is right, and heroes must still risk their lives to protect what matters. But the ultimate victory of light over darkness is assured not by fate or divine decree, but by the very structure of reality itself. The war between Daedra and Daedra is not really a war at all, in the usual sense. It is more like the eternal tension between different aspects of existence: creation and destruction, order and chaos, hope and despair, love and hate, all exist together and define each other. Without Daedra, there would be no need for heroes. Without the threat of destruction, there would be no appreciation for what has been created. Without the possibility of falling, there would be no meaning in choosing to stand. The Daedra understood this when they made Mundus. They could have created a perfect realm where nothing bad could ever happen, but such a place would also be a place where nothing truly good could happen either. Real goodness requires the freedom to choose evil, and real courage requires the presence of genuine danger. By allowing Daedra to exist and to threaten their creation, Daedra made it possible for mortals to achieve greatness and for the world to become something more wonderful than its makers ever imagined. In the end, the reason Daedra cannot win is not that they are weak or foolish or unlucky. It is that winning in the way they imagine would actually destroy the very thing they are trying to possess. A world completely controlled by Daedric power would be a dead world where nothing new could ever grow or change or surprise anyone. Such a world would be worthless even to Daedra because there would be nothing left in it worth controlling. The true victory in the cosmic conflict between light and dark does not belong to either Daedra or Daedra, but to the mortals who live in the world they made together. Every person who chooses to create rather than destroy to help, rather than harm to hope, rather than despair, is writing another page in the story of existence itself. This story has no final chapter because it is always growing and changing and becoming something new. The Daedra cannot win because winning would end the story, and Daedra do not need to win because they have already achieved their goal of creating a world where infinite stories are possible.